share some links. Okay, cool. So, and then maybe periodically I'll drop some links in a WhatsApp group that's relevant to the topics that I'm speaking of. Yeah, we're gonna keep it real simple and allow people to ask some questions, um, and get through these topics, because what I perceive is that collectively these topics just help us understand the entirety of the money system that we're dealing with. And no, I was not fancy with this image here. We're just gonna keep it moving. So 33 aspects of money, money magic. There's four sections. Each one, it has one simple screen where we're going to be speaking of some things. But the first two sections, what we're talking about, rights stemming from duties. So we'll get into a conversation about how all of the rights that anyone has in this world, it stems from some duty. And without a duty, if you perceive you have a right, you are just lying to yourself. Value and valuation. We're going to speak of that because without value, there is no money system, no financial instruments or anything. And then without methods of valuation, we wouldn't be able to determine what's the worth of anything. So we're gonna get into what type of valuations is we dealing with. International money laws. We literally just gonna identify some laws that you should do some research and development on. Um, I'm pretty sure that there is a way for me to get some extreme powered internet, but because I don't have it right now, I'm not going to be going back and forth showing you guys a lot of tabs, which I planned on doing. I'll just be dropping some links, right? Nevertheless, uh, I'll record this. Well, it's being recorded, so maybe in the future videos I'll show some screens. But public and private contracts, we're gonna get into public versus private contracts. Why is it important to understand the difference? And in every situation you're dealing with in life, it's good to know whether it's a private contract that's governing your actions or a public contract. Secure interest in financial instruments. We're gonna get into secure interest in financial instruments because interest. I'm not gonna talk about the definition of it now. Yeah, interest is something that allows us to have some credit. We're gonna say that it allows you to get some credit. It's evidence of some value, and when you secure it, it's an interesting process that allows you to have extreme evidence of value that you could transfer, right? We'll get into transferability later. Yeah, financial instruments will come next. We'll talk about the different types of financial instruments. Really, what is a financial instrument? Because at the end of the day, a lot of things we're dealing with are financial instruments in different forms, and how you can deal with them is very interesting. We are not 100% dealing with all instruments how we can, and we're not 100% dealing with all instruments that we have access to. But once we understand financial instruments, I got a feeling that people will be engaging with a lot more different types of financial instruments and doing a lot of different things. Some of the most basic financial instruments: securities, bills, notes, and checks. We'll be discussing a little bit about what's the difference between these four things and how these four things can be utilized. How are they sometimes utilized? Credit. Credit is very important. It's really the foundation of a whole bunch of systems. So we'll talk about that credit and what it really is a very interesting concept when you look at it in its basic elements. And that's what this conversation is going to be about. More than anything, is going to be about the basic elements of the nature of the words and what the capacity is, not only one way that they're utilized, but what's the capacity to utilize these things. So UPC 600, we're going to get into that. That is a law dealing with credits, letters of credits, and assignability and transferability. So transferability and assignment, those are two interesting things that we have to discuss. What is transferability when it comes to value and credit and securities and things of this nature? And what is assignment? Assignment of interest and securities and value. And, methods of assignments coming up next. What are the different methods of assignment? What are some methods of payment? It's very interesting when you understand that there's a lot of different methods. A lot of times we only see one or two or three, and it gets deep. We don't get into how deep it gets when we talk about accounting systems and banks being value transfer agents. All right. So letters of credit, that'll be next, because letters of credit is one of the most important documents in the credit world. There's various types of letters of credit, and I think that we'll be interested to find out who all has the authority to create draft letters of credits, and what's the effect of having a letter of credit. Transfer agents, individuals, organizations. I'm not going to get into the definition now, but we're going to talk about transfer agents and their ability to actually transfer, assets and value and credit and these different securities, bills, notes, and checks and things of this nature. Accounting 101 is important because without accounting, there would be no systems of finance, no systems of banking, because all that systems of banking are and systems of finance are accounting systems. Brings us into the next thing: accounting systems and accounts. Because that's what we're dealing with. We're dealing with accounting systems. Dealing with bank accounts, security accounts, uh, anything that we're talking about. UCC one filings, personal accounts, private accounts. It's all accounting and accounts. And when you understand that, you can look at banks as simple transfer agents and of accounts. And you can have an account for anything you're going to learn. And the banking system reflects it. International systems of value. We're going to talk about 3 and 4 real quick. What are the the third and fourth sections? The third section gets into international systems of value registration. We would have talked about value and different types of documents that are financial instruments. Then we get into what type of systems are there that allows you to register your value. Public value systems, private value systems interoperability is important because there's so many systems around the world, and if you got your own system, which is totally legal, you can have your personal system of accounting, you can have a family system. We'll get into all of that later. You can have a company system, you have an organization system, a national system, and all of these types of systems of accounting and value. Yet when it comes to exchanging or transferring, remember we talked about transferability and assignment. When it comes time to transfer and or assign some value from one system to another system, you want to be able to do that because that's a form of payment, right? So you might got your own personal system and you may be accounting for your value how you see fit, and you want that to get into another system. Well, the laws of interoperability, basically the ability for something to enter another system and how compatible these systems are, it gets into play there. Negotiable instrument law enforcement is next because we didn't really well yeah, negotiable instrument. All these things are negotiable instruments. All these financial documents are negotiable instruments. Without getting too deep into negotiable instruments at this point of the conversation, which we'll do later, just want to speak about the organizations that are involved with law enforcement of negotiable instruments. Institutions, organizations that have accepted the responsibility to enforce laws that are relative to negotiable instruments, stocks, bonds, promissory notes, bills of exchange, letters of credit, and things of that nature. Revenue services and treasury departments are all over the world. In every country, and every company should have also their own revenue service and treasury departments. Once you understand what's the essential services and nature of a revenue service or treasury department, it's really nothing to fear. You could start to understand your relationship with any revenue service or treasury department, especially when it comes to making sure that the value that you have can be input into their system that they represent. Hint, hint. Well, it gets deep. Financial crimes enforcement, a little bit about negotiable instrument law enforcement is relevant to that. Yet sometimes there's financial crimes occurring that do not have to necessarily deal with negotiable instruments. It could be financial in nature. And then when we talked about negotiable instrument law enforcement, we're really going to talk about laws. And when we talk about financial crimes enforcement, we more so talk about some agencies that's really doing the front lines of enforcement you can count on. Sister K by Act 1666. That's very important when it comes to finance and banking because that was one of the historical laws that got into place in the UK. We'll get into deep depth as to why that was important when they began to pretty much say that a lot of people was just dead and lost at sea, and what type of effect that had on the banking institutions worldwide. And the power of a revocation of power of attorney, because once you can identify if there's somebody who shouldn't have the power to handle business or finances on your behalf, you have the power to revoke their power and to take their power back and to put the power in the hands of the person or the entity that you wish that power to be in, which would become your fiduciary, which brings us into the conversation of fiduciary powers. It's important to go over all these things in a nice little smooth order so we can see how they connect. It brings us to the last 4 or 6 topics that's in section 4, even though the sections aren't broke down. But it's about accounting and its systems. We talked about accounting systems could be public and private earlier. We talked about international systems of value registration earlier as well. But here we'll wrap it on up and just talk about how these systems are really affecting our daily lives and how we could actually be a part of creation of new systems if we perceive systems are not serving us well, or if we just see a opportunity to serve ourselves better or others better. We'll get into accounts because everyone has the power to establish an account. There's so many types of accounts. And once you start accounting for value, well, you're in the business of banking and you're already in the business of banking, is what you're going to realize by the end of this conversation. Negotiable instruments. We'll get deeper into that, into like the specifics that requires an instrument to be negotiable and how you can go about negotiating instruments and some laws that's dealing with that. Letters of credit will be discussed specifically in what are the aspects of a letter of credit, what makes a letter of credit, and things of that nature. The last 3 would be about legislation of public documents. That's important because a lot of times in this world, as we'll see throughout this conversation, a lot of these financial instruments are simply contracts, and they're documents that's putting responsibility on a certain party to do a certain thing. Nevertheless, when you have your contracts and they're private, right? And you want to put that information in the public sector so that everybody could know and everyone could maybe be held accountable to some things, then you're gonna need to know how to legalize those documents according to some legislations. And also, when it comes to needing evidence in court venues, which you need to do a lot of times, if you ever have court, you need to enforce your rights. You want to make sure that it's lawful evidence. Once you put something in public international notice or private international notice, according to the law, then it becomes actual. Okay, cool. Yeah, I was gonna do 4 sections. My man hit me with the paid Zoom link. Life is great, fellas. All right, legislation of public documents. Last but not least, sovereignty. Well, not last but not least, second to last is sovereignty, religious freedoms, and exemptions. That's important because whether it's a public document, a public value system, or a private value system, all of that is determined based on the jurisdiction it's coming from. And what we'll notice when we talk about this is that most countries are actually religions. They're registered religions. They have ministries of defense, ministry of justice, right? They have ministries of everything. The crown is a religious institution. Most of all countries are religious in nature, which most of their governmental powers stem from the right to actually oversee their congregations and their religious members. Nevertheless, within countries and within international law, there is the right to choose your own religion, the right to actually exercise your own freedoms, and you get certain exemptions from that. It's very important, last but not least, in that conversation to realize that religious freedoms are not just what we think they are. They're not just um, rights that you get because you're a part of a certain religion. They are rights that you have because you have certain beliefs. Okay. So protected in the laws of religious freedoms is the right to believe something and the right to act according to your unique belief. All right. That is deep. I did not actually think about that 40-minute hold up thing. Can everybody hear me? We got somebody in the waiting room. So I pulled out to let Wafiki in, man. I'm pulling out to let Wafiki in. Okay, they say we got to end in 10 minutes. So, hey, Edward, how about you create the next link and we're going to keep it rolling until
It's
it never
already
stops.
it's already ready. I can switch over to it. I send it to you. You can send it to everybody in the group, and then
You just
I'll put
drop
it.
it in the group because they should
Okay,
all
I
be,
dropped it in the
everybody
group
here
too.
should be in the group.
All right,
Yeah,
I'm
I
on.
was going to let another brother in anyway, so we could stop this now. That was a good intro, and we just gonna get into it one slide at a time from here. All right. Did
All right, so
everybody hear that?
everybody jump into this other Zoom with no time limit, and we're gonna
And
start the actual substance of the meeting.
facts. And
Got it.
yeah, that's it. That's good enough info. Peace, y'all.